Welcome to this edition of Tuesday Talks with Twyla. Today, I want to talk about the concept of doing a thought audit. So, I know that a lot of my clients struggle with getting a handle on what they're thinking and the concept of the awareness around our thoughts and the concepts of consciously thinking as opposed to just passively thinking, right? And how active we are with being intentional with our thoughts and being really diligent to know what's just playing in the background, what thoughts we're thinking. So I love the idea of a thought audit, probably because my background is in accounting and I was an auditor for 4 years. And I just carried that kind of audit technique mindset with me in a lot of different things, especially when it's problem solving or, getting to the bottom of something or putting processes in place, practices regularly for consistency, for like assurance and security and things like that. So I carry that with me even with the mindset work because a lot of this work we have to be very intentional about because if we don't, our brains just revert to what they're used to doing, right? Because our survival brain wants to be efficient. And so it likes to just think what it's always thought. It will lean towards the negative thoughts because it thinks that that's what will keep us safe. And so we have to know all of this stuff about how our brains work so we understand why this happens. Nothing has gone wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. Every one of us has this human brain, has these tendencies. And so we just have to know that, but then we have to put practices in place. We have to be intentional about our thought work. So I love this concept of a thought audit. So in essence, it's just reviewing and evaluating the thoughts that you're having. And so, like, how do we, figure out what they are and like what is the actual practice here for the actual audit part? And the easiest way to do this is to do a thought download where you just get everything out of your head and down onto paper. And this can be challenging. For me, it is very challenging. And so I often will have times where it's like, okay, I'm going to journal today, or I'm going to do a thought download. And I sit down and I have my blank sheet of paper. And all of a sudden, my mind is just clear as a bell. There's not a single thought in there, right? Like it's just like I'm trying too hard. Or I always imagine like, where just like everything scatters, right? And so it's all there. It's just hidden. It's hiding. It's just not available in the moment. And so I have to find ways to generate the thought production and figure out like what's actually going on in there. So if this is something that happens for you, I encourage you not to give up because sometimes it can feel very defeating or like this isn't for me or this doesn't work for me or I can't do this. Just notice that negative thinking, right? But know that you can do this. So what I do if I have that happen, some days it's like, oh, I need a journal and I've just got, it's just flooding out. But on the times where I feel like my mind just goes blank, what I start with is just everything that I know. Today is Tuesday, September 2nd, right? Like all the stuff that I can think of. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm feeling. And sometimes that's an easier way to start is how you feel because you can turn inward and evaluate what you're feeling in your body. I feel stressed this morning, or I feel anxious about the day, or I feel overwhelmed by all the things that I have to do today. And as you just start that process, the thoughts will come with the feelings because, as I have talked about, our thoughts create our feelings. And so if it's easier to tap into the feelings to get the thought generation to start flowing, that is totally fine. Because the purpose of the thought work isn't just to figure out what we're thinking, but the significance of our thoughts is that it creates the feelings that we have, and that drives all of our actions. So that creates the experience that we have. So we want to know what the thoughts are that are in our head. And so the thought audit starts with obviously having all the thoughts in a place where you can take a look at them. And that's why I recommend the thought downloads so you can get everything out. But you can do this in little bits and pieces. And this is one of the things that I find very attractive because it feels like not as much of a heavy lift. And I call these check-ins. And so you just have set intervals where you check in and ask yourself what you're thinking. And it might be what you're thinking or what you're feeling. But it's set intervals. So if you're going to be intentional about this, you want to set an alarm on your phone or you want it to be just a normal practice every morning. I do this every night before I go to bed. Whatever the interval is or whatever the increment and the timing that you want to do, and then you check in and you're finding the thoughts. What am I thinking right now? What am I feeling right now? How did my day go? Um, how did I manage my mind throughout the day? Like what were the most common thoughts? What were the most predominant thoughts? And you just do a check-in and you figure out what your thoughts are. Getting all the thoughts in a place where you can evaluate them is the first step. And so you have to get them out of your head and put some distance between you. So I like to imagine that you just have a different perspective now, right? Because you've stepped back and you have the thoughts laid out in front of you and you take a pause, you take a look at them, you have a different perspective, right? You've kind of taken some steps back and you're looking at them. So the audit part is that evaluation where we're looking at the thoughts that we're thinking. And as I had mentioned, the thoughts we think create our feelings, which is what impacts our actions, how we show up to work, how we show up to our kids, to our family, to our spouse, our partner, to our friends, right? To our extended family. Everything that we do or don't do is because of the way that we feel. And so how our experience of life is based on how we feel. So we have to know what these thoughts are and the feelings that they're creating because that's everything. That's our whole life experience. And so once you take and have the perspective and you can see all of the thoughts, the audit part is evaluating these thoughts, right? And if it's first thing in the morning and you're in a funk, you might be looking at a slew of negative thoughts. And the audit part is taking a look at those, evaluating those, and making decisions around them. But what we don't want to do is like thought hop. We don't want to be like, well, I don't want to be thinking that, so I'm going to go think this, right? There's a delicate process there. But the first step here is always to audit and evaluate, what am I thinking? What thoughts are playing on replay? What thoughts am I waking up with in the morning? What thoughts am I thinking as soon as I get to work or as soon as I get home after work? Right? What what is the go-to thoughts? What are the thoughts on replay? What am I thinking in the moment? All of that awareness around the thoughts that we're having and understanding the impact of that, right? That's going to shape your day, that's going to shape your experience, it's going to shape your interaction with your loved ones, right? And so you want to make sure that you set time aside for this and you just do the thought audit and think of it as kind of like an exercise, right? You're going to do the thought download or you're going to do the check-ins and then you're going to evaluate the thoughts that you're thinking so that you have an idea of what's going on for you. And in the future weeks, we'll talk more about what else is there to find here, right? Like the emotional piece and the importance of feeling emotions and how to do that and what happens when we don't. So, what's really common for us is we'll have emotions that we just don't want to feel. And so we do other things. We do other activities. We buffer, we redirect, we avoid, we resist, we react. And that's kind of a whole concept in and of itself that is significant because sometimes we just don't even realize that we're doing this because it just becomes second nature. It just becomes, habit. It just becomes part of, how we manage our lives. And so the more we can get comfortable with our feelings, the more we can take control of things that maybe feel like they're controlling us. So it all starts with this thought audit, getting an evaluation of the thoughts that you're having and figuring out what all is in your head and what that looks like can be first thing in the morning. It can be a daily practice. It can be interval check-ins, whatever you feel is a process that you would be willing to commit to, that's what I would recommend. So sometimes I do the big one in the morning. I grab my journal and I just unload everything in my brain. And other times I just do little intermittent check-ins where I just check in, like, what's going on right now? And sometimes that's, prompted from some kind of an emotional reaction, like, I'm just super annoyed or I'm super frustrated or I feel like everything's going wrong today. And then I do a check in, like, what is going on with me, right? Like, what is the thought that's playing or what is the emotion and what is it telling me? And so, I well, sometimes we'll start with that emotional piece, right? Because we feel it and it's what can get our attention. But we have to figure out what the thoughts are behind it because that's what's driving that emotion. And that can be harder to do. And so we just have to find the time, dedicate the presence to being really intentional and conscious about our thinking because there's just so much unconscious thoughts playing that if we aren't intentional about it, can really spiral into an entire day or week or weeks of negativity. And that's when usually like it's like, wow, how long has this been going on? Like, how long have I been thinking this? How long have I been showing up like this? How long has this been affecting me that I didn't get a grip on this? And grab the reins and be more intentional about my thoughts, having conscious, active thought work be like a priority and be an intention for every single day. So I can tell you that when I do that, everything is different. When I'm intentional about, okay, today this is, I'm going to set my mind to this, and I do that, and my day looks totally different than the days where I just basically kind of slip into that unconscious thinking, which is always negative, and I just exist there. I wanted to say live there, but I just exist there for the day or days. And then when I catch myself and I reflect back, I'm just astonished at how like unproductive those days are, how unsettling and uncomfortable the whole day is consumed with negativity because that's all I'm thinking. And it can happen so easily, right? We just slip into those patterns or we just slip into that unconscious thinking. And maybe that's where you live right now. Maybe that's just where you exist right now because you don't do any of this work. And so this is hopefully something that will kind of, you know, shake that loose for you so that you have a practice that you can implement that can either be the thought download or that can be the check-ins, but it's a thought audit. And it's taking a look and evaluating the thoughts that you're having, but it's being intentional about it. It's setting, the priority to do the exercise, do it regularly, at least do it daily, or do it at whatever interval feels good for you, and doing it to whatever extent, if it's a complete thought download or if it's just the little check-ins. But being intentional about it and getting a handle on what am I thinking instead of just existing in that unconscious thinking. We're always thinking. Our brains are full of thoughts, nonstop, constant, multiple, right? It's not like you just think one thought at a time. Our brain is so intricate that we can think about what we're thinking about. We can think about what we're feeling and we can generate feelings if we want to. And so we have all of that ability. But if we don't tap into that, then we're just kind of coasting, we're just existing, and we're just living a life of those unconscious thoughts. And it can feel like life is happening to us. It can feel like all of this is happening to us instead of us being intentional and deciding, I'm going to set the intention for the day. I'm going to set the intention for the week. And I'm going to direct my mind to think in this way instead. And we can do that, right? All of our thoughts are optional. So figuring out what we're thinking and then having some evaluation over what you discover, right, is how you slip out of that unconscious thinking and you break free from that kind of, I don't want to say trap, but it can feel that way once you slip into it, unless you're intentional about pulling yourself out. This practice, this thought audit work is what will pull you out of that. It'll make the process intentional, where you'll take a look at the thoughts that you're thinking, and you'll be able to take a look at, like, the evaluate the experience that you're having in your life, because all of those thoughts create how you're feeling, which is impacting your actions, how you show up and experience your life. And so this is it. This is the thought audit. I would recommend that you pick one, pick either the thought download or the check-ins, and just, commit to what you're comfortable with, but commit to something. Commit to taking action to implement this and see what you uncover here. The next weeks, we'll talk about what to do with what you uncover, ways to navigate and manage and be more proactive as far as thought creation or feeling our emotions. Those will be the topics coming up in the following weeks, so that you can kind of keep doing this work and not just take a look at what's going on, but be more intentional about being proactive and creating the thoughts that you want. So the thought audit, either the thought download or the check-ins, that's today's topic. I hope you put some of this into practice. I'm excited to hear how it goes, if you get stuck, or for sure, as you're, digging in, you might reveal some things that are surprising to you. So if there's any of that that comes up and you would like to visit about it, of course, I'm always available for that. I look forward to hearing how it goes for you. And I just wish you the best of luck of putting into practice one of these, either the thought download or the intermittent check-ins, and just try it and see how it goes. And take a look at what you're thinking and evaluate what is going on unconsciously or without your awareness, that you can maybe have a different perspective on and make some decisions around and maybe make some changes. So with that, this week's topic, thought audit, let me know how it goes. Until next week, I hope you have an amazing week.